My name is Maria, and I work the night shift at a small bar on the outskirts of town. It's the kind of place that looks like it's been there forever. Wooden walls weathered by time, a neon beer sign buzzing faintly above the entrance. It's tucked between a gas station and an auto shop, just off the highway. In the summer, truckers and travelers stop by for a cold drink and a break from the road. In the winter, only the truly desperate come in. Tonight, a blizzard had settled over town, the kind that turns roads into ice rinks and buries parked cars under thick layers of snow. It was close to 1 a.m., and the bar was nearly empty, just me and a lone regular in the corner nursing a whiskey. The storm had chased away most customers hours ago, and I was already thinking about closing early. Then, the door creaked open and a man walked in. He was tall, maybe late 40s, with neatly combed dark hair and an expensive-looking wool coat. Something about him didn't fit the setting. He wasn't dressed for the kind of people that usually ended up in a roadside bar during a snowstorm. He walked with an easy confidence, his shoes barely crunching against the scattered salt on the floor. I put on my best bartender smile. "What can I get you?" He scanned the bottles behind me like he already knew what he wanted. "Scotch. Neat." His voice was smooth, polite. As I poured his drink, he looked at me and asked, "Do you like working here?" A normal enough question, but there was something in the way he asked it, like he already knew my answer. I shrugged. "Pays the bills." He smiled at that, but didn't say anything else. For a while, he just sipped his drink, watching the snow fall through the window. The wind howled outside, rattling the old windows in their frames. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "Do you ever think about doing something bigger?" I hesitated. It was an odd question from a stranger, but I'd had weirder conversations behind the bar. "I guess," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Haven't figured out what that would be yet." He nodded slowly, almost like he was disappointed. Then he drained his glass, set a crisp $100 bill on the bar, and walked out into the storm. I told myself I wouldn't see him again. I was wrong. A week later, the snow was still piled high against the windows, and the temperature had dropped even lower. It was another slow night, just me and the jukebox humming softly in the background when the door opened again. It was him, but this time he wasn't alone. A woman followed him inside, shaking the snow from her coat. She was in her mid-30s, dressed stylishly, but in a way that didn't quite match the place. Too put together, too polished. The moment she saw me, she lit up with an almost exaggerated warmth. "Oh my God, you are so pretty," she said, reaching out and lightly touching my arm. Her fingers lingered just a second too long. I laughed it off. "Thanks. What can I get you to?" The man didn't speak. The woman did all the talking, ordering drinks and making small talk, but her questions were oddly personal. "How long have you worked here? Do you live alone? Do you drive yourself home?" The hairs on my neck stood on end. Something felt off. The way she kept glancing at the man, as if checking for approval. The way her smile never quite reached her eyes. Then she leaned in, lowering her voice. "Listen, I run these private events, exclusive parties. Girls like you make serious money. I'm talking $10,000 for one weekend, no strings attached." I forced a polite laugh. "Sounds too good to be true." She kept smiling. "It's real. I promise. Why don't you step outside for a second? There's someone who can explain it better." My stomach turned. The way she said it, it wasn't a suggestion. Just then, the door swung open again. A small group of people stumbled in, laughing, shaking snow from their coats. The woman's expression changed in an instant. Her friendly mask slipped, just for a fraction of a second, replaced by something else. She turned to the man. Without a word, They both stood and walked out. I watched through the window as they stepped into the blizzard, disappearing into the night. After that, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I told my boss, and he assured me he was just a phone call away if I ever felt unsafe. But the feeling lingered. Then, a few nights later, I saw it. A black SUV parked just across the lot. Engine off, headlights off, just sitting there. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone was waiting for a tow. But when I locked up and started walking to my car, my pulse quickened. The SUV didn't move, but I felt it watching me. I fumbled for my keys, trying to act normal, trying not to let the fear show. I got into my car, locked the doors, and checked my mirrors. The SUV pulled out the moment I did. I turned onto the main road. So did they. I took a random side street. They followed. My hands tightened on the wheel. My mind raced. Then, without hesitating, I swung into the parking lot of a police station. The SUV slowed at the intersection, paused for a few seconds, then sped off into the storm. I sat there, gripping the wheel, my breath fogging up the windshield. A week later, another slow night. The wind howled outside, and snow piled against the windows. I was wiping down the bar when the door creaked open again. It was the woman, alone this time. My pulse spiked. I forced myself to stay calm, casually pulling my phone from my pocket. I texted my boss. Now. The woman walked up to the bar, folding her hands neatly in front of her. "Thought I'd come check on you," she said, her voice smooth as ever. I stared at her. "We're closing soon," she pouted. "Just one drink?" I hesitated. If I poured it, I could stall her, buy time until my boss got here. I turned to grab a glass. Click. The sound made my stomach drop. I spun back around. The front door was shut. She was gone. Then I heard it. A metallic rattling. The back door. Someone was trying to get in. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could, a metal shaker, and clutched it tight. My other hand dialed 911. Then, headlights swept into the lot. My boss. The rattling stopped. Through the window, I saw it. A black SUV peeling out of the parking lot, tires skidding against the ice. When the cops arrived, we checked the security footage. It was worse than I imagined. 2 masked figures had been crouching outside the front door, waiting. Another was at the back, pounding on the exit, trying to flush me out. The SUV's plates were fake. The police had nothing to go on. It's been months and no arrests have been made. But I know one thing. They'll never stop looking for girls like me. I used to work the night shift at a small gas station off a rural highway. Used to. The place was a little old, a little run down. Just a single-story building with 2 pumps and a flickering neon sign that barely cut through the darkness. It wasn't the kind of place that saw much traffic late at night, especially in winter. And this winter was brutal. The snow had been falling steadily all night, covering the road in a thick, uneven layer of ice. The wind howled through the cracks in the windows, seeping into my bones no matter how high I cranked the store's old radiator. The highway outside was almost lifeless, just an occasional truck groaning past, tires skidding slightly as they fought for traction. By 2:30 a.m., I was the only one around. No customers, no cars, nothing but the low hum of the fluorescent lights and the rhythmic ticking of the security camera monitor behind the counter. That's when I noticed him. A figure standing just beyond the gas pumps. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. The swirling snow made everything look strange, blurred the edges of things. But when I looked closer, he was still there. A man in a dark green parka with the hood pulled up, standing motionless near the farthest pump. He had his hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched against the cold. I frowned. There was no car, I hadn't heard anyone pull up. The gas station was in the middle of nowhere. If he had walked here, he would have had to come from miles away. Something felt off. I tried to shake it off. Maybe his car had broken down a little ways back. Maybe he was waiting for a ride. Still, I didn't want to step outside. I kept an eye on him through the window while pretending to organize the gum display near the register. He didn't move, just stood there, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Then, suddenly, he started walking toward the door. He pushed inside, and a gust of freezing air followed him, sending a chill through the store. Now that he was closer, I could see his face. Rough, maybe mid-30s, unshaven but not quite scruffy. His eyes were dark, unreadable. He approached the counter quickly, too quickly, like he was trying to close the space between us before I could react. "Hey," he said, his voice hoarse, like he'd been out in the cold too long. "You got a gas? Can borrow?" I hesitated. Yeah. How much do you need?" "Not much," he said, shifting slightly. "Just enough to get to the next town." His voice was odd, too calm, too rehearsed. Something in my gut twisted. "Where's your car?" I asked. He jerked his head toward the road. "Just past the hill. Ran out of gas a couple miles back." I glanced at the monitor behind me. The security camera showed the gas station, the pumps, the empty lot beyond. Nothing but snow and darkness. I had been outside just a few minutes ago. There hadn't been a car. I swallowed, trying to keep my face neutral. "I can call a tow truck for you." His jaw tightened. "Nah, don't need a tow. Just gas." He was watching me now, closely. I forced a smile. "Company policy. I can't give out gas unless the car is here." There was a beat of silence, the kind that stretches just a little too long. Then he exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Look, it's freezing out there. I just need a little help. Just grab a flashlight and come take a look. I think there might be something wrong under the hood." A cold, creeping dread coiled in my stomach. I took a slow step back, putting the counter between us. "Sorry, I can't leave the store." His fingers twitched at his sides. Then his expression changed. The nervous energy, the fake frustration, gone. His posture straightened, his lips curling into something like amusement, like he had all the time in the world. I didn't move. Then, out of the corner of my eye, something flickered on the security monitor. Movement. Near the edge of the screen, just beyond the gas pumps, I saw it. Someone crouching low near the back of the lot. Hiding. My blood turned to ice. There was more than one of them. I glanced at the monitor again, and my stomach dropped. The gas station's side door. The one employees used to take out the trash. It was cracked open. I hadn't unlocked it. I didn't think, I reacted. My hand shot under the counter, slamming my palm against the emergency alarm button. A sharp, shrieking sound filled the store, an automatic distress signal that would alert the police immediately. The man didn't even flinch. Instead, he smiled. A slow, knowing grin. Like he had expected this. Then, in one swift movement, he turned and bolted. I ran to the monitors just in time to see him and the second figure sprint into the darkness, not toward a car, but toward the woods behind the gas station. The cameras flickered. The emergency alarm kept wailing, but there was no sign of them anymore. When the police arrived, I told them everything. They searched the area, but in the blizzard, their tracks disappeared fast. But that wasn't the worst part. As the officers inspected the building, one of them stopped near the side entrance. "Hey," he called out, "look at this." I stepped closer, my breath fogging in the cold air. The door frame had scratches on it, like someone had been working at the lock, trying to break in. And then the officer pointed out something else, something that made my skin crawl, a single wet footprint on the inside of the door. Someone had been in the store, watching me. The police never found them. The security footage showed the man's face clearly, but not the second figure. The prints outside suggested at least 3 people had been there. But the most unsettling thing? The abandoned car they claimed to have never existed. I quit the job a week later. Now, every time I drive past that gas station in the dead of winter, I feel it. Like something still lingers there, waiting for the next person to take the night shift. I worked the night shift at a 24-hour superstore on the outskirts of town. It's not the worst job in the world, but after a while, the nights start to blur together. Same shelves, same fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, same quiet hum of background music looping every few hours. In the summer, we get the occasional rush of night owls, travelers stopping in for snacks, or truckers grabbing supplies. But in the winter, the store turns into a ghost town after midnight. And this winter had been brutal. Snowstorms hit back to back, coating the parking lot in thick ice and making the roads nearly undrivable. Most nights, only a handful of customers trickled in, people stranded by the weather or looking for last-minute necessities. That's why I noticed him immediately. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't even pretending to. He was watching me. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe he was just another bored customer killing time while waiting for someone. But after a while, I realized he was always close. No matter where I went, whether I was restocking shelves, checking inventory, or straightening up near the registers, he was there, lurking. I caught glimpses of him out of the corner of my eye. He never picked anything up, never browsed like a normal customer. He just hovered in the next aisle over, pretending to be interested in whatever random shelf he stood by. And then I saw it. The phone in his hand. The camera pointed directly at me. A cold knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I turned to grab my store radio, planning to call security, only to realize it was dead. Great. The battery must have died at some point during my shift. I debated walking to the back office, but the idea of turning my back on him made my skin crawl. That's when I felt it, a hand on my arm. I jumped, spinning around, but before I could react, a woman's voice rang out. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." She was smiling, wide, too friendly, like we were old friends reuniting after years apart. I stared at her, confused. Had she mistaken me for someone else? Then she leaned in, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "That guy's been recording you. Come with me." My pulse spiked. I flicked my eyes toward him, and sure enough, he was still standing there. But now, he wasn't even pretending to browse. He was staring right at me. My stomach turned. I didn't even hesitate. I let the woman pull me away, her grip firm on my wrist. She steered me toward the other side of the store, talking loudly about some imaginary trip we had taken together, making it sound like we were catching up. The whole thing felt surreal. I barely processed what she was saying. My mind was stuck on him. Had he really been following me the entire night? Had he been filming me this whole time? I wanted to glance back, to see if he was still there, but I was too afraid of what I'd see. The woman kept leading me forward, her grip tightening slightly. That's when I noticed where we were heading, past the registers, past the main aisles, toward the warehouse section at the back of the store, toward the asterisk side exit, the one without cameras. Something cold and sharp settled in my gut. I slowed my steps. "We should find my manager," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. The woman didn't let go. "Come on, just a little further," she said, still smiling, but now it felt wrong. Fake. My pulse hammered in my ears. She was leading me outside. Panic surged through me. I wrenched my arm free and took a step back. She didn't stop me. She just stared. Then her smile widened, and she said my name, a name I had never given her. Every hair on my body stood on end. I took another step back. I need to grab my stuff first, I stammered, trying to put some distance between us. She didn't move, didn't blink. Then she said, "You should really come outside." And that's when I heard it. The faintest sound of a car engine idling just outside the side door. My blood turned to ice. I bolted. I didn't wait for an explanation, didn't try to rationalize it. I turned and ran toward the front of the store, my sneakers skidding slightly on the linoleum. The woman didn't chase me. She didn't call after me. She just stood there, watching. One of my coworkers saw me running and immediately asked what was wrong. I barely managed to get the words out, "Call security." By the time they arrived, both the man and the woman were gone. Security reviewed the footage, and it confirmed everything. The man had been following me for nearly an hour. The woman had entered the store just minutes before she approached me. And the worst part? They had come in together. The police were called, but they had little to go on. The man's face was caught on camera, but the woman had been careful, keeping her head turned just enough to avoid a clear shot. The real kicker? When they checked the security footage from the parking lot, they found something even worse. A dark van had been parked near the side exit for almost 20 minutes, waiting. The cops told me it was likely a failed abduction attempt, that the woman had been there to gain my trust, to lead me outside, to make it easier. I don't work night shifts anymore, and even now, months later, I still have nightmares about what would have happened if I had stepped outside that door.